I remember this one big customer calling my boss and saying, I want you to fire Alex. So we work with the licensees for the major studios. What I mentioned before, like Marvel, DC, Warner Brothers. So I remember I was like working super crazy hours. And then my daughter came to me one day. She was 3 and she goes, Daddy, can I visit you at your place, at your home? Because she thought I was not living at home anymore.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
like, that crushed my heart. And I go, I think design elevates what your business is. Sometimes people, they do need to make mistakes and then they will grow from there. You don't have to walk through every opportunity you have. You don't have to take
Mm.
all the opportunities because
This is the Sphere of Influence podcast with your host, truly, Moni. And joining me today is Alex. Alex, thank you so much for coming on board with me. I know last time we had a bit of a situation, but I'm just happy that everything worked out on your end and everything is good. That's all that matters at the end of the day. So, if you don't mind, for people that don't know you, would you share a little about you and your background?
yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me. So I'm originally from Brazil. My name is Alex Costa. I'm originally from Brazil. I moved to America in 2004 to work in a graphic design company back in the day. So worked for this company for about 3 years, and they went out of business. So in
Mm.
2008, I started my own business, and the company I was working for, they used to do work with the studios, specifically Disney. Disney was the biggest customer,
Mm.
and
Wow.
then in 2008, there was like the crash of the economy, and they went out of business. So then I decided to start my own thing in 2008. So since 2008, I have my own design business. It's two different businesses. So basically, one is a design business, the other is a fine art business. One complement the other because the fine arts, we do fine art reproductions. On the design business, we create whatever the customer wants us to create. So since 2008, so it's been 15 years uh, in this field designing. So super exciting.
That's awesome. So you're from Brazil. Let's start there.
Yeah.
How was that
hmm
transition for you coming out there to over here? What year did you say you got here? 2004?
2004. Yeah. Actually, it was a super interesting story because my background is not design, actually. My
Oh,
degree in Brazil is civil engineering. So I used to
oh,
do graphic design on a side, yeah, to pay for college, to pay like different things. And then I worked in Brazil for a season as an engineer. And then economy in Brazil was really, tough back then. And then there was like some members of my family living in America, and they actually were the ones like encouraged me to come because there was this opportunity to work in graphic design because I
mm,
loved it. Honestly, it was my passion since day one, being a designer. But then I end up like going to engineering. Anyways, moved to America. It was tricky in the beginning. I would say the first six
mm,
months, it's kind of like you're nobody. Okay, you're moving to a
yeah.
country, nobody knows you. You know what I mean? You don't speak the language that well. I still don't speak the language that well, but um, I have my
You did
Brazilian
just
accent.
fine.
But so yeah, moving here, I think the first 6 months were kind of tricky. But then after 6 months, I think just like, okay, now I know how this thing works. In Brazil is very different than America.
Yeah.
Everything is different. Like the way you were treated, the way economy is, the way you have access to different things. So moving to America, I think I'm living the dream because I think the America is the land of opportunities, and I'm like an example. You can come like and you can build your reputation and build your experience in whatever field you're passionate about. And if you're good, if you put on the work, willing to outwork everyone else, then you can achieve your goals. That's the beauty of coming to America for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. We're actually neighbors. Actually from Ecuador. I
Oh
was born
wow.
here. Yeah, I was born here, but I left when I was 2 years old, and I came back when I was 13. So same. No, it's I could understand the struggle of coming to being raised somewhere else that just has a completely different dynamic of just like the system, the people, the customs, they're very different, right? I think
Yeah.
in our countries, it's very much family oriented and it's just very
Mm-hmm.
different. And education, it's a very big thing, like without it, there's nothing there. There's no
Yeah.
way you can make a living in other countries. And coming here, my mom, she didn't have much either, but it, I love what you said. This is the land of opportunity, and those that really fight for it and look for the opportunities really are able to make something. And you are one of those people, right? Proof that it doesn't matter where you come from. If you put the hard work in, you're gonna figure it out and get it done. Some people might have a lot of excuses, I feel like. And it's funny. I was going back and forth with a gentleman on Instagram on somebody else's post because they were saying that, the generation nowadays feel very entitled. And this person was one of those people that has a lot of excuses, and sometimes whatever the situation is, we still have control over it.
Yeah.
If we're not happy being an employee somewhere, then we need to create the opportunities to be somewhere else and be happy, right?
Yes.
But sometimes for people, I feel it's easier to just make excuses and to
100%.
be content where they are. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that you are one of those people that doesn't have that mindset. And I feel very grateful and lucky to have you joining me today. So I know that you said you started civil engineering
Yeah.
and you really love graphic design.
That's
So
correct.
how did you end up going to school for civil engineering and not why not graphic design to begin with?
Well, it's a long story, but basically like it was more like a family thing, you know. It was just like
Mm,
everybody expected me to do engineering. So
mm,
I was like I went to college super young, 16 to 17 years
wow.
old, and it was just like I should have like talked to everybody and say, "Hey guys, no, this is not what I want. I'm going to do what I want," you know. But the end of the day, I was not on a correct mindset of like, okay, let's put the, think about it, think through it. I was basically like, it was a family thing. That's why. But my passion was always like designing things. I was always
Mm,
super young age designing, drawing things. And I was like, I remember growing up, oh, I'm going to be an architect, not a civil engineer, you know. I love to design things. I love to create things. But then I went into this season of like, okay, I'm gonna do something because, like you said, in our culture in Brazil or South America, it's more like, oh, you like, okay, if you want to be successful, you have to be a lawyer, engineer. Like there's all these like labels that they expect you to follow, and I was
correct.
one of them. You know, I believed, okay, I'm gonna do this hard work, and I was successful in that adventure. I graduated civil engineer, got my job in a construction company, and all these different things. But at the end of the day, that was not my passion.
Mm.
Yeah,
And I think also people don't understand that in the culture that we live in too, it was so much more than it's not that you didn't have your own personality, but your family had dictated a lot of our lives, right? So
yeah,
you couldn't just go against that. Now there's a lot more liberty to do that and have a different opinion, but I think before that was not the way that families ran. So
yeah,
yeah, but that's amazing. And then so you said you came here, you started as an employee working for somebody else doing
yeah.
graphic design, and how was that for you coming here? And was that what was your well, let's back up a little. What was your first job when you got here from
hmm
Brazil?
That was the first job. I came
Oh,
specifically to work in that company,
okay.
and because it was close friends, almost family, that they own this company. So they gave me an opportunity. I came to work for them. It was a small company, but they had big contracts with the licensees of the studios. You know, So it was interesting because I came and I remember like super fresh. Like I knew some English, but like very minimum. And I remember my former boss would put me to answer the phones. He would go, answer the phone. I don't care. I want you to learn as fast as possible. So it was like that transition of like, okay, I need to, think outside the box so I can communicate well and perform well because one, I was coming to work and in a company that it was a new company for me, a new job for me. I've never done graphic design as my official job before. It was my first time being like an employee on that field. And also on top of that, like these big customers, these big companies that they will deal with me. And I remember on the first 6 months working for them, I remember this one big customer calling my boss and saying, I want you to fire Alex. I don't like
Wow.
working with him. I cannot communicate with him. And I've done like couple things like in communication that cause couple problems. And I remember the owner of the company saying to my boss, "Hey, I don't think it's gonna work for what he's doing. I think you
Oh
should
no.
let him go or have him do something else, and then have someone do what he's doing." I remember that. So funny because that same person when I opened my own business, she became my first customer because
Wow.
after my boss called me and say, "Hey Alex, you're missing the boat on these points. You're dropping the ball here, here, and here." So one of the customers are asking for me to like they don't like working with you. So I decided on that moment, like, you know what, I'm gonna go the extra mile, and I'm gonna fix this thing. So I started really working hard on getting her the confidence back in me, not in me, but like in the work I was doing. So, anyways, it was a funny story in the beginning because I almost like screwed it up in the beginning, but like later on, no, and today she's my friend. To this day, we talk, and
That's
she's a
awesome.
personal friend to this day.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so, how was that transition for you from an employee to a business owner, right? I think for me, I could speak for myself, that it's easier said than done. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I'll just open up my own business.
Hmm.
And it's just so much goes into building a business. And you have to have so much more accountability for yourself because
Yeah.
there's goals, right? But you have to structure your day accordingly and make sure that you're being as productive as possible. And you can't just tunnel vision on something because now you're in charge of every single aspect of that business. So how
Yeah.
was that for you?
Yeah. It was another big transition. Starting my own business because when the company I was working for when they went out of business, I remember taking a couple weeks vacation to just like, okay, what I'm gonna do now? And then I
Right.
remember receiving this call. And then it was that person I just told you that she was like, want me, my former boss, to fire me. She called me and like, hey Alex, just want to let you know that if you ever start a business, I'll be your first customer. So, anyways, and
Wow.
then from there, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this thing. So I started from the living room of my home. I told my wife we're gonna start this thing together. We're gonna work off of our living room, and then we grow this, and we get an office. But about your point, it was a different mindset because when you work for someone else, you clock in whatever 9 a.m. and clock out 5 p.m. and you come next day and so forth and so on, right? But when you're a business owner,
Right.
there's a lot of set of accountability things that you have to be accountable for, especially with yourself, with your business, with the customer. So there's a lot of things like supply chain, and now it's like, okay, I need to account for, I have to have accounting, I have to send invoices, I have to schedule meetings, I have to, all these different things. I was not really like, nobody's ever prepared 100%, but I
Right.
felt like, man, I'm like so overwhelmed in the beginning. But then I was little by little learning the little things. Okay, this is how you do accounting. Oh, this is how you send invoices. And in the beginning, it was just me, right? So then we
Right.
grew into a team. But in the beginning, like you have to do everything. Like I was like, meetings and then doing the work and delivering the work and revisions and invoicing and it was everything under one umbrella, which is me, was me. But
Right.
it was a learning process. I would say the first like couple months it was really tough, but I think little by little I was like learning the how to be a business owner, which is a it requires a totally new set of skills to be a business owner. But I'm grateful because it makes you grow into a person that has these new skill sets, you know, and that will propel you to your next season of your life, and that I'm grateful for that. I wouldn't do anything different today.
That's beautiful. And so, what was the hardest part transitioning for you or starting the business? Like, what was the hardest part?
I think the hardest part for me was like managing all the supply chain because of the kind of business I was starting. And then accounting. I think finances of the business, it was a struggle for me.
Mm,
Finances and sending invoices, and I would do a work and then I forgot to send the invoice for like a month. And I was like, oh my goodness, forgot to send that invoice. I'm gonna survive as a business if I don't send the invoices. So I would say the supply chain and finances were like the two hardest part for me as a solopreneur, right? But then when
right.
we grew into a team, I think the hardest thing for me in the beginning it was hiring people. How yeah, I
Mhm.
hired so many people that I it was not the perfect fit for the business. So that hiring someone and firing someone, I think it was like as a whole, it was like the biggest thing for me because I had to learn a whole new thing about how to hire people, and because a business is about people. So, anyways, that was like the two major things for me.
Yeah, I know. Accounting is, you have to have a heart for it. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Um, yeah, I think most business would probably say somewhere along the lines accounting is definitely the hardest thing. And what you pointed out as far as people joining you, my business is very small, but it is very difficult. So how were you able to find those the right like pieces to your team?
whoa, oh my goodness, did you see that?
What was that?
It was a it was a piece of art that just fell. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
So what was the question again? The how was the? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So how was it finding that, like, how did you go about finding the right people? Like, what was the key for you to find that key team member, like the
Yeah.
person that really fit into your team?
You know, I'll say this. The reason I struggle so much hiring people because I would before I would go like hiring from my closest friends. You know, a friend will
Mm,
talk to me and go, "Hey, I need work," and then okay, let's start.
right.
You know, getting you set up and helping me. And then I did that for like a bunch of times. And
Mm,
I go, man, the hard thing about hiring close friends and family is that accountability is it's a hard thing, you know, because the close friends and family they expect grace, a lot of grace. And then I think for me
right.
the change of mindset of like, no, I need to prepare a proper, you know, expectations, requirements. Hey, to be hired, you need to have this skill set, these are the requirements for the job and these are the expectations for the job. And I think everything changed when I finally got that set up. Like, okay, to be hired as a graphic designer, you need to have all these skill sets, all these set of skills. And then this is your job description. And I expect you to do this, this, and that. So I think when I finally put that in place, I was able to find the correct people. But before that, it was just more like, oh, I like you. I'm going to hire you. But then you don't have the skill set to perform. And then it turns into, okay, my friend, I don't want to have those hard conversations with my friend. So accountability is hard. Then you don't want to, you know, hurt their feelings and stuff like that. So it was like super tricky. My first five people of the
Mm,
team, the first hires, I'm sorry, it
mm-hmm.
was always like that cycle of like, okay, I'll hire you, and then things will turn so bad, and then okay, I have to let you go now. And then
Oh
now I
no.
don't have the friendship anymore because the person now is like, oh, Alex a jerk, or you know what I mean, like whatever. And then I did that like couple more than couple times. I would say 5 times. And then finally setting those expectations, requirements, and all these different things made me realize, man, it makes a difference. Why? Because one, if you hire the wrong person, it's bad. If you hire the right person to the wrong position, it's bad too. So I think
Right.
it's just like I've learned in a hard way. Until I hired the first, I would say the first correct, the first like I did the correct procedures to hire someone. So that first person that like we interview the right way, we check the requirements, all the check boxes. He was like a dream because that person
Mm.
like is with us to this day, and he performs
Awesome.
so well. So I think it was man, what a hard lesson, super hard lesson.
Sometimes that's the way we have to learn them, though,
Yeah,
and they make us better people for it. So when you mentioned you've fired a few people because of something that they did wrong, can you
yeah.
talk about what was it that was not done correctly?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we do, because we work with licensees, I would say 99% of our customers today, it's somewhat related to the movie industry. We work with the licensees of the big studios. For example, we work with the licensee for Marvel, the licensee for DC Comics, Warner Brothers, Universal, a bunch of these big guys. So what these guys they have very high expectations of,
Correct.
like, one, that you're gonna deliver what you promised on the day that you promised. So turnaround time is super important because if you don't deliver by that specific date, it can cause a lot of like a chain reaction of delays for them. So that's one of
Correct.
the big things. And quality of work too. So I think the two main things is, like, for example, I remember this one guy, great guy, super great guy. But the thing is, like, he was always like not performing to um, on a due dates, right? So that caused a lot of problem. And then
Mm.
also another thing too is like personality. I think this one guy that I'm talking now, he was like not the right. He was always in a bad mood, for example.
Mm.
And I think just like he creates a toxic environment. So I
Right.
think those three things are the major things for us. Like, one, toxic environment because it affects everybody. Two is like being able to deliver the projects on time. And three, with quality, because they expect top-notch quality. If the funny thing is, like, I've been working with these guys for 15 years now. If you do everything correct for 10 years, okay, and you are a superhero for them, it's like, oh my goodness, I love Alex and his team. I love Real Color. My company's called, the name is Real Color, so I love Real Color, blah blah blah. But then the first mistake you make, then you're not a hero anymore, because they turn into like being like, oh my goodness, this is awesome, to like, man, everything is late now, what's going on? So there's always that pressure that we have to maintain this standard. And I think these people that sometimes it was my fault. Don't get me wrong. I'm not in any shape or form I'm saying, oh my goodness, that person is such a bad employee. No, the end of the day is everything is my fault because I hired them, or I put them in the wrong position, and I didn't set the expectations correctly. So how can I even talk to them and say, hey, you didn't perform well? And they're gonna say, well, I you
I
didn't
didn't know.
say, you didn't tell me, you didn't tell me that expectations. I didn't know I supposed to do this. I didn't know I was supposed to do that. So I think on my part, I think all the failures is all they're all my fault, because it was always like not setting the expectations correctly, or not getting the right person doing the getting the right person to the right place in a company. But yeah, those are the main things.
I love that. I love how you touched on the accountability that we have
Mhm.
as business owners to in every aspect of our company, right? If we're failing as a company, it's because our leader is either not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or we don't have the right leader, right? And sometimes it's hard, I think, as a business owner to hold that hat. And I think one of the things I've learned this year is like, it's okay if you started with the vision of having a business, but if you're not the leader that should be guiding those people, it's okay. Just find the right person for that place and
Yeah.
make sure, because that's ultimately that's going to drive your company, right? And maybe
Yeah.
you're holding it back, and it's a hard pill to swallow for some people, but the reality is if you want to see it thrive, then you need to have the right just like you said, the right people in the right places, and that will make your business a successful business.
That's
So
correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I know that you touched on very big companies that you work with. How has
Mhm.
that been for you? That has to be, I don't know, maybe intimidating. Is it, has it been fun? Like how what is that like for you?
It's fun. It's a mix of fun and also pressure because well, we deal with a lot of like super tight deadlines. You know, that is normal. It's normal. It's the business we have. Tight deadlines is it's the normal. You know, so we are, but it's a blessing at the same time. It's super fun. I love all the customers. I think they also are under a lot of pressure. So that pressure is like it's all over because there's such like I was saying the chain reaction. When you deliver something late, they get so many delays as well. But it's fun. I love working with them. So we work with the licensees for the major studios. What I mentioned before, like Marvel, DC, Warner Brothers, the licensees. So it's fun because you get to meet all these people and you talk about fun projects and they ask us to develop things for them and create designing things and stuff like that. Super fun. It's a lot of fun. And I think one of the things that I love the most is connecting with people. I would say that's what I love the most. I
Hmm.
love designing, don't get me wrong. I love designing. I love graphic design. I love what we do as a profession. But I think this kind of business we have, I have the blessing of connecting with a lot of people. And I think that is super cool and is a plus because
Yeah.
I got to know all these artists, these guys that it's so funny. This is like super cool. So I grew up in Brazil watching Bugs Bunny, right? Cartoon
Right.
Bugs Bunny. So I moved to America and then started working with graphic design and stuff like that. And my first customer is the daughter of the guy who created Bugs Bunny. So
Wow.
yeah, Ruth Clampett. Ruth Clampett is she's my friend to this day, and it's so funny. It's so I'm sorry, so fun and funny at the same time to remember watching those cartoons back in the day. And now I
Right.
was talking to the person that the family of the daughter of the guy who created it. So I think
Right.
it's fun in general. It's super fun. Everybody I work with, everybody that we talk to, for the most part, they're such great people. We collaborate a lot. I mean, I was talking about the pressure. I think every business has its pressure on different things. So if you're real estate or if you're content creator or if you're whatever the business is, I think pressure is part of the game. We
Right.
have, but for us, it's just like the tight deadlines is what sometimes creates the most like friction. But I would say overall, so fun to work with them. So fun.
That's amazing. That's really cool. And so I don't actually think I know exactly. I know that you do graphic design, but can you tell
Yeah,
us a little bit more about what exactly you do?
yeah. So in our business, we have two different things that we do, very very distinct. One, we create things, we design things. Whatever the customer wants us to design, we design. For example, this one licensee of DC Comics, they contacted me saying, "Hey, we want to release a series of like images of like superheroes and villains coming out of the shadows." And I would like you guys to create something. So they commissioned us to create a series of portraits, like close-ups of the superheroes and villains coming out of the shadows. So the first ones are Batman and Joker, and then so we create things, right? So we create whatever they ask us to create. But on and then, for example, we also work with Ryan Pineda as like we do. their visual branding. We create logos. We do that side of the business of creating things. Then we have a second side of the business, which is the fine art business. The studios, they have, let's say there's a movie coming out, like a Spider-Man movie. So there's all these things that the fans, they go watch the movie, but they want to buy things to collect. So we do production of fine art prints for
Okay.
the licensees as well. So we create pieces of art, collectibles, high end, that are signed, number, limited edition, so you can go
Wow.
and buy. For example, if you go to the Disneyland, the park, if you go
Yeah.
to the store, you can buy these things that we some of the items of the fine arts side that we produce. So we produce fine art, but we also have a side of creating things. Yeah, we don't create anything for the movies. Okay, that is a whole new is a totally separate thing that the studios that they have. What we do is like we work with the licensees, supporting the licensees so they can create pieces that collectors can buy. Yeah,
Wow.
it's more like on a high end side. Yeah, that
Yeah.
we work with. Yeah.
So I'm guessing some of those items in the back of your on your background are some of those pieces.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah. So if I turn is it okay to turn the
Yeah,
camera to
of
show it or no?
course. Yeah,
So if I turn the camera, so you're gonna see that piece right there. I don't know if you can see it.
I can. Wow, this is beautiful.
Yeah, that is one example. So for the most part, we that is a like a super popular product because that guy, it's an artist called Alex Ross. He's a super nice guy. He's one of the most like famous and award-winning DC Comics and Marvel artists that we work very close together. So yeah, that is one of his images. And in that case, we just produced. We didn't create anything on that piece. We just
Okay.
produced as a fine art print so collectors can buy, you know. But
Yeah.
sometimes they do ask us to create things on the fine art side. And then we work with businesses like Ryan. We design things for Ryan and Ryan Pineda and a
Right.
couple other companies that we were doing branding and design and visual branding. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so now that we're talking about Ryan, um, I've seen the work that you've done for him. It's very, very beautiful.
Thank you.
And I know that branding is a big part of businesses. Um, can you expand a little bit on why a brand is important for a business?
Yeah, I think it's just like when you talk about brand, there's like different things that it's that I would say it's part of branding, right? Branding goes beyond your logo, but I think logo is part of your brand, but it goes beyond, right? Branding is there's it's such a big name, right? And I think visual branding is like which is like everything that you see that you can see it and realize and connect right away with that brand. For example, if you see a Nike logo, you're gonna recognize that logo everywhere you go, or Adidas, or it doesn't have to be those big guys. If you see some small names that you see the logo and you recognize right away. And I think what we do, which is the visual branding, it's important to create that message. I say that the visual branding design, it's the silent ambassador of your brand. It's the
Mm.
silent ambassador because you see it and you recognize it. I mean, a lot of the small businesses, it's I understand that it's really hard to even create like consistency. I think one of the big things of branding, especially the visual branding, is creating consistency across the board. And I think those
Right.
big names, you're never gonna see like a Nike logo that is distorted, right? It's always like
Right.
consistent. And I think in branding, I think one of the key things for me is keep it simple, keep it clean, and be consistent. And you're gonna have a successful visual branding, because but again, if you don't have a brand that people can look and identify with, the logo doesn't matter if your product's not good, right? So if you
Right.
have a good product, a good service, and people like what you do, then I think it's like it's worth to have a nice uh, visual branding. So it connects very well. But I think the first step, and I think most people when they start a business, the first thing that they want to spend a lot of time is like, oh, I need to create a logo and this and all these different elements before even starting the business, right? Okay,
Right.
that's cool. But what I've learned is that the most successful companies and business people, they think about that a little later because the most important thing is like the creating the message and mastering the product, having the best product possible, and then being acquiring the skill sets that is gonna make your business like stand out in the market. And then you go, okay, now I can I can work in my other side of the branding, which is like the visual branding. We I love working with Ryan Pineda because I think it's just like when you talk about Ryan Pineda, everybody knows. Okay, Ryan is like the real estate guy who does like dominates the social media, have these cool events, and then everybody knows who Ryan Pineda is. And now you see that he has like 6 or 7 different businesses, all successful, and now he's like, okay, we need to bring consistency to the brand across the board, visual branding, and now
Right.
we working together. And I think that's key. I think it's just like people have it backwards sometimes.
Yeah.
Even though I do graphic design, don't get me wrong, I think people they have a tendency of like thinking on, I would say logo quote unquote first, and I think just like a logo, it's very important, but I think it's secondary if you put into perspective like the quality of a product or the beauty of your logo. I think focus on the quality of a product because then you can have a beautiful logo that people look at it and be like recognizing right where they go, or they're
Right.
gonna see a logo that is super cool but they don't like the experience and they go, I don't like the experience. Who cares about that logo? I think it's just
Right.
like that fine line of
Right.
people understanding branding and visual branding. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I love what I do, and visual branding, in my opinion, for certain businesses, very important. Like Ryan, for example. I don't know if you went to WealthCon. Did you go to WealthCon?
Not this one that happened in Las Vegas. I went to the one in Hollywood.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when you this last WealthCon, we were talking, and you go, we need to step up the game of like the visual branding, the graphics. So WealthCon Vegas, the last one, all these new elements that elevates the brand. I think that's the beauty of visual branding and design. It elevates who you are. Ryan sometimes he says like the money elevates who you are. I think design elevates what your business is. If your business is like uh, it elevates you. You know what I mean? I think, and I think it's very important. Some people they neglect, and some people they do it like they have the wrong priority. Sometimes they think
Right.
on design first, but some people don't. They don't think at all. I think is wrong as well. I think there's a place for you to have a nice, clean design that people are proud to even put like a T-shirt. You know what I mean with that visual branding. I think it's very important.
No, I definitely agree. Um, I think it's really hard, as a business owner to figure out what the priorities are. And I
Yeah,
think we, as people, we're very focused on how things are viewed, right? So I think
yeah,
that's why we tend to focus on, okay, we want a pretty logo, but you hit it right on the nail when you talked about you have to make sure your business is providing value, it's up to par, and then later focus on the visual of it. So
yeah,
that's one of the most important things. But we don't, unless you come from a family that, or you have relationships that have guided you through your journey in entrepreneurship, I think it's hard to figure out what
yeah.
is the first thing you need to focus on. And while on that topic, what has been the worst piece of advice you've ever received as an entrepreneur?
You know what? Early on in the game, I remember talking to this one person. This is the worst piece of advice I ever received. So I have a daughter, she's 7, and I have a son, he's 4. I'm sorry, this advice was not early on. It was like my daughter was 3. It was more
Okay.
like, 4 years ago. And I remember right at the pandemic, 2020, I was like, my business was like really like growing exponentially. So in 2020, my business went from uh, from one location to two locations. We have two physical locations today. We were growing, but when you grow, it's super hard. So you have to make those right decisions so you don't actually end up like being bankrupt, because the kind of business I have,
Right.
there's a side of like a very heavy investment, financially speaking. So I have to be very careful. So I remember I was like working super crazy hours, and then my daughter came to me one day. She was 3, and she goes, "Daddy, can I visit you at your place, at your home?" Because she thought I was not living at home anymore.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
like, that crushed my heart. And I go, that day was like insane. And I remember talking to this person, and I go, "Man, my daughter told me this." And he goes, "Oh man, come on. When she's like teenager, she's not gonna remember that. Just
Mm,
like, don't just like gotta like have to be like strong minded and keep on plowing through. Your business is growing. You know what I mean? It's gonna
wow.
pay it off. She's gonna be happy because you're gonna be able to provide even better life for them." That was the worst advice ever, because I think there's a way to have balance. You have,
Correct.
you know, your children. They only gonna be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 one time in their lives, and they say
Yes.
up to 10 years old is when you really connect with your kids, and they want to be around you no matter what. And then after that, they go into the teenager season of their lives. They have their best friends and all these different things. And if
Yeah.
you're not present when they're growing up, then their connection is not, there's no connection right there. So I think that was the
Right.
worst piece of advice. And I would say to everybody, there's a way to build your business and bring balance to your life, enjoy your family, enjoy your kids, because 100% the person who does not, the person who neglects their children and the family building a business, they will regret 100%. Because even though it
Yeah.
was a season of my life, I regret it deeply today. But I think that was the worst piece of advice ever.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's one thing to not be able to. There's some people that are not able to spend the time with their children because they don't have an option. They're a single parent, but and even then, I mean, I think there's still an option, right? There's still you still have to try to find the balance, but it's a little bit harder for those people that have like
Yeah,
single parents and lower income. But it is so important, just like you said. Children are very impressionable,
yeah,
and that connection that you have with them will build them into it's like if you think about your childhood and the things that shaped you, like, how can anybody say that they don't shape you? They shape you every single aspect of your life. And I think, yeah, I believe it's 9 or 10 years old. Yeah. Up until that age, you're learning, you're a sponge, and you're learning
yeah,
how to, like, the relationship that you have with your parents are so important, because they'll teach you how to act and interact with other people, right?
yeah.
So it is very important. So I'm glad that you figured out that that wasn't the way to go. So what do you do now to
100%.
find balance in your entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur? I'm sorry.
I'm trying to. I'm much more. Before, I was like in the office Monday to Friday, from morning to like sometimes late at night. So that was my life, okay? Like,
Mm,
but now I have a much more flexible schedule. I work from home. I would say 3 or 4 days out of the week I'm working from home. I come to the office, but I don't come to the office as much anymore. And I think that is one thing. And also, me and my wife, we chose to homeschool. So it's one layer that it's something that you have to be willing to sacrifice some things in your career in order to have that extra time. So today I forced myself into a more flexible schedule, and it only happens if you trust people that they're gonna perform without you around. And also, there's the flip side of the coin that we were talking earlier today. That is like, sometimes people, they do need to make mistakes, and then they will grow from there. And I think one of the things that before early in the game in my business, I was around so much, kind of like involved in everything, that you people don't grow. And I think now being more flexible with my schedule, it's good for me, it's good for my family, and it's good for the businesses as a in general, because people have that ability to like, okay, it's okay to fail and then learn from there. And I think none of those examples I was giving you early today, that people that we had to let go, it was not because they made one mistake. I think mistakes are part of life, and I think it's just like mistakes are very important for you to learn and grow. But that's how it is today, a little more flexible on my schedule. I think you're muted.
I am muted.
There you go. Sorry.
That is awesome. Is what I was saying, that you're able to find balance. Um, I think it's very important, to be able to find that balance between family and work. Um, and the key part to you being able to do that is, just like you said, finding the right pieces
Yeah,
for of your team, and putting the right people in the right places so that it runs smooth. So when you're not there, they know what to do. I was just reading a book. Can't think of the name of the book, but it's all about operations, right? And
yeah,
having operations, and writing down the processes of the company, because once they're there, you're no longer going, like, if whoever was taking over that position, right? If everything that they do is in writing, then God forbid anything happens to them, then there's somebody that could take over that, because there is an operations, there's a manual of like how
yeah,
things are done.
yeah.
And then also that sets weight for expectations from employees as well.
That's
So
correct.
the reason why you're able to balance and step away is because you have the right people in the right places. So
That's correct. Yeah,
um, and I do see that I was saying also that we actually met through Ryan,
yeah.
and I wanted to talk to you about your social media strategy and
Mm.
how was that for you. Can you tell me a little bit about social media? How did you feel about social media prior to going into the program, and what was your presence like before then?
So before coming to Wealthy Creator, we had social media was about posting about the products, posting about the process, posting about what we're doing. I was never in front of the cameras ever, ever. I was like, you know what? I don't want to talk in front of the cameras. I don't want to, just want to let's show our work, and then that would speak by itself. But then I came across Ryan, and then okay, and I go, okay, let's try this program. Back in the day was Content Empire, and then as the classes, as the coaching calls, I was taking the coaching calls and talking to people. I soon realized, man, I using the wrong strategy. Because I think one of the most powerful tools that we have today as business owners, entrepreneurs, or it's our personal brand. I think it's just like my personal brand was like inexistent. Nobody knew who I was. I mean, the customers that we deal with all the time, they know me. They know me. We talk and all these different things. We're friends. But I think outside that little bubble, I didn't have any, like, zero presence. I didn't know, I didn't want to expose myself for many reasons. One of them, like, because of my accent from Brazil. There's all these excuses, right? So then talking to Ryan and Justin and being part of the program, I go, you know what? It makes sense to put myself out there and talk about things and create and work on my personal brand. So today, it's still a lot of work to do, but I do have some, like, I'm posting on my personal social media side, creating my personal brand. I do talk about the work we do at the office, of course, and the projects that we do, but I'm trying to go beyond a little bit of like only um, the brand for my business and talk about my personal brand. And I think today, this is my journey today. Like even like talking to you today, I think it's just like putting myself out there and letting people know who I am, what I do, what I believe in, and all these different things. And I today that's my goal, is to create my personal brand, and I think it's one of the most powerful tools that we have today. Because from your personal brand, you can create all these other things that are much harder if you do it without having a personal brand.
Yeah. And with that said, what have you seen any wins or any gains from you actually being on social media?
Yeah.
What has that been for you?
So crazy because I started like posting, not very consistent, but like starting like posting in back in November, December, and it's been like 6 months. Even though I don't have a huge following on my personal side, I do have so much meaningful connections that came from social media that is just insane. I think it's just like just getting myself out there got me to the point of working with Ryan Pineda today, for example. You know, we do most of his creative projects that we do today is fruit of like getting myself out there. And a couple other names that I cannot mention right now, but like for example, WealthCon Vegas. I was able to connect with a lot of people, some speakers as well, and they will go like, "Oh, I know who you are because of this," and then it was always back to the social media. And it's like
Mm,
I was introducing myself to this one person, one of the speakers, and they go, "Oh, I know who you are," and I go, "Wow, that's cool." And I think it's just like it's been super cool because I've been able to connect with very nice people on a personal side and also on a professional side. I'll never imagine connecting with such a high caliber people outside of what I do today. Like with these big names that it was just because of social media. And I think it's just like it just gives me the fuel to continue. It gives me like, oh man, I see the fruits of such a small thing that I'm doing today. Imagine if I do it like the right, if I do more. The
right.
results are gonna be even better. So that's what I say too. Is like sometimes we go after the followings, like the numbers, like oh I have 100,000 followers, which I want to get there. Okay, that's my goal, is to grow my following, of course. But I think for me today it has been super cool to connect on a personal level, 101, with like such a great people that I've been able to connect because of social media.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny that you mentioned that, it's like, oh, you didn't want to get on social media because of your, the way you speak, right? The accent. I think we're all very self conscious of ourselves, right? We're so worried about what people are going to think, what people are going to say, that we limit ourselves from
Yeah.
putting our business out there. And really the bottom line is you getting that exposure could help your business. And I remember a few months back being on a call with you, and you mentioned also that one of your biggest wins from social media was also getting like a really big contract. And
Yes,
yeah, I don't know if you could speak on it, but I know that you mentioned there was like one of your biggest contracts
it
came
is.
out of
Yeah,
there, right? And
yeah,
you don't have a big following. You're not posting every single day, right? But you're present, you're somewhat present there. You're aiming towards that, and you were able to gain one of the biggest contracts
yeah,
of your entire, you know,
yeah.
company through social media. So it just
100%.
speaks to the value of the value that's on social media, and that some businesses might be missing out on because
Yeah,
we're afraid of what people are going to say or the way we talk. And I'm self-conscious about the way I talk because English is not my first language as well, and I have sometimes words just poof go away. And
yeah,
it was funny, just on my last podcast I was trying to say a word and it just wouldn't, like, it was in my mind, and for some reason I just couldn't get it out.
yeah.
So but yeah, for anybody, for all my business owners out there worried about what people are going to say about you, just
Mm,
don't just
yeah,
get out there and start promoting. um,
100%.
and you'll see that it is worth your time and worth the effort. So what are you currently doing for social media? Do you have a team? What does your social media strategy look like?
So my strategy, I don't have a team. Okay, we are not a team that is dedicated to social media. What we do is like it's a team effort. That sometimes someone will help me with this. It's really hard to take someone and in my team today and say, oh, we're gonna do social media. So it's more like it's not. I don't have a dedicated team. But having said that, because of Ryan, working with Ryan, my next move is using his service like the Pineda Media,
Right.
because my strategy now is I've been recording like a podcast style, but like more like sitting down with someone and talking. So that's the strategy. The strategy is we created this area here in the office that's more like a living room like vibe. So we're gonna sit down. Initially, we're gonna talk internally with people within the team, talk to them, and talk about different things, business and life, and so the strategy for me, it's like talking to someone in a living room, recording that video and having that on like a long format, and also out of that long format creating the short format and then posting through like Instagram and Facebook and having the long format on YouTube. But it's I love what you do, the interview, super cool because so many people need to hear all these different things. What my strategy is more like having a conversation, like a kind of like a when you sit down with your friend at your living
Right.
room and having a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It's still an interview, but I think it's just more like a back and forth. That's a strategy. So very soon you guys gonna see it, that we're gonna be posting. So but that's a strategy.
I
It's more
can't wait
like
to see
yeah.
it.
And I think that's your strategy, right? You record a
Yeah.
podcast and then uh-huh.
Yeah, so I started doing the short form. Initially, I did a lot of short form. And right now, yeah, I'm definitely focused on the longer form. And I think it's easier to manage, at least for me,
Yeah.
to do the longer podcasts and then get content and get short clips from the podcast. And we're also focusing on longer form. So, yeah.
So, do you mind if I ask you your strategy? Like, oh, not strategy, but you just told me your strategy, the long format. But how does
Mhm.
it work for you? How does it look like for you? Your day to day social media.
So my day-to-day social media is usually just answering. Well, I need to share more of the personal side of it, and that's I have a hard time with that. I
Mm-hmm.
have a hard time with that. I am a little bit more personal, and I do try to share, but I don't share as much as I guess I should.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just sharing information. For me, it's been sharing information, sharing a little bit of the um, what you do in a way where you're just capturing what you do and showing it to people, and then also like showing what other people are saying about you. And just recently now we're doing the longer form, and we're going to be getting most of our shorts from there, and then also in addition adding some like day-to-day stuff and you know just the basics that we do around.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I wanted to end with a rapid round where I ask you five questions,
Mm-hmm.
and you could just answer them for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so the first one is, what is one thing you wish you knew when you started your journey?
I wish I knew that the key to success is not knowing how to do it necessarily, but to connect with people that has done it before. I think I should, if I could go back, is just like the power of mentors. To have mentors
Mhm.
in your journey, it's a thing I wish I could go back.
Yeah. It's funny. It's been the topic of the month, I think. I've every single podcast that I've had thus far has mentioned the same thing.
Mm,
Mentors are so important. For
yeah,
me, I think it just propels you, right, to do things faster.
it does.
If you don't have the tools, if you don't know, then when you get with a mentor that's doing whatever it is that you're seeking to gain from them, you're going to learn so much faster that if you pick up a book, if you do it on your own, because they have life experience that you're not going to learn unless you actually go through it, right?
Yeah.
So it's so much faster to get to a certain point if we get a mentor. And in your life, who has been the mentor, like one of your mentors that you that's dearest to you?
Well, I would say by far the biggest mentor I've had so far in my entire life is Ryan Pineda.
Mm,
He's the one, the big one for me. I had a couple of
awesome.
them before Ryan, but like actually connecting on a personal level, I would say is Ryan. I think it's just like I was very blessed that coming to the Wealthy Creator program and then connecting with him and then being able to talk to him on a day to day basis. I think it's just like I've learned so much, and I think Ryan it is the biggest mentor so far for me, 100%.
Awesome. And what is the most challenging project you've worked on, and what did you learn from it?
Wow. Yeah, this is, I think, is like the most challenging project I ever worked with. It's something that I should never had. It's something that I've never had start. I should have never started before that project. It was like I got involved into, I think one of the mistakes that business people do sometimes, they start a business and then they start another one,
Mm.
and then you have 3 4 things going on and it just drains you, right? So I started
Right.
this one business that really drained me. Is in a tech space, and the biggest lesson is that it was super hard. Okay, I underestimated the amount of work necessary, the amount of money necessary. And the biggest lesson is this for me. It's just like you don't have to walk through every opportunity you have. You don't have to take
Mm,
all the opportunities, because if you take all the good opportunities, it's gonna kill you anyways. And then the second thing is, uh, I learned the lesson that you have to do some more due diligence before you start anything.
mm,
Like I was
yeah.
so naive of like believing that, oh, this is gonna be so easy. That person was talking to me. It's gonna be so easy, and then it was not easy. It was very hard. It was very time consuming and very like money drain. It drained like resources like crazy. So I learned that take the time, think through the opportunities, because it can really be like a blessing can turn into a curse if you don't like take the time to plan. And I think it's just like I've learned not to take all the opportunities it comes my way.
No. Yeah. And that's hard, I think, too, right? Like as a
Mm-hmm.
business owner, you're like, well, you think about the finance part of it, right? That's one. And then the challenge of
Yeah.
I could do it, oh, I could do it. I could do it. And sometimes we take on so much,
Yeah.
thinking that we're just gonna do it.
Yeah.
And we really run ourselves to the ground. So
That's correct.
that's a great lesson that you've learned. Um, what is the best piece of advice that you've received as an entrepreneur?
The best piece of advice I will give an entrepreneur today.
No, that you received as an entrepreneur.
Oh, the best piece of advice. I think
Mhm.
it goes on those lines that the thing I regretted. I think the best piece of advice I have is like, don't try to do everything yourself. If you like, on the flip side of like, you don't have to take all the opportunities. As an entrepreneur, I think the best advice I got is like, you don't have to know everything. You don't have
Mm,
to know how to do everything, even in your business. You
yeah.
have to know how to hire people and have people around you that knows how to do that thing better than you. That's the best piece of
Yes.
advice I received. Yeah.
That is so true. I think I learned that one later in life for me. I've always been I a jack of all trades, right? So I
Yeah.
just figure, oh, I could do it on my own, and
Yeah.
that is so true. We don't have to. You're just making your life harder by doing that. So,
100%.
um, what is the most satisfying aspect of what you do?
I think it's just like the most satisfying thing is this. People come to us with a vision, and then we'll say that we bring your vision to life, and it's so
Mhm.
cool to grab a vision from someone and turn into something. I think that is so cool that sometimes I talk to people on the phone and they go, oh, I have this vision to do this and that, and then getting all those pieces of the puzzle, going to the drawing board and going to the computer or whatever, creating that vision and bringing that vision to life. and see people's reaction. Oh my goodness! I think that's the most satisfying. Is bringing vision to life in form of like a design. Yeah,
That sounds amazing. That sounds so fulfilling, to be quite honest, just to be able to hit it out of the park, and whatever, bring that those thoughts that that person had to life. What was
yeah.
one of the most touching one, like touching experience that you've had with a customer when with that happening?
Wow. So I think one of like I don't know if one of the most like touch moments I had in business. It was back in 2011. So it was still grinding and doing all these things, and I would say like uh, I was sometimes sleeping in the office, right? So I think one of the most things like it was very touchy for me was having a conversation with a customer, and then she's like, "No, no, no, we're not gonna talk about work. We're gonna talk about you, how
Oh,
you doing." And I think like I know that it sounds crazy that I'm not gonna say, oh, that the most fulfilling touch moment. It's like it was this project, but for me, thinking through it, it was like someone that was put the project aside and said, no, 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 we're not gonna talk about business today. We're gonna talk about you, how you
yeah,
do, and then I think it was like it speaks volumes for me of that person that took the
right,
time to like understand what I was going through, regardless of like, and it was a big project that we were working for her, and it was
right.
super super cool. It was very very it touched me a lot in a personal on a personal side.
Yeah, no, I could understand that. It's like we don't really expect that from customers,
No,
right? You to be able to be seen as a person and
yeah,
not just your company, that's got to stop you on your tracks. So
yeah, yeah.
that's amazing. And then my last question is, if you had a message for new entrepreneurs, what would it be? I really like to focus on this one because I know that there's a lot of people out there, younger, older, on the fence about trying to start this journey and as an entrepreneur, and letting go of the 9 to 5 because they're not happy or whatever might be the case for them. But for those new entrepreneurs, what would be that message for them?
I would say this: whatever you have a passion for, to start your own thing, being an entrepreneur, and I think it's just like the first thing I would say is this: find someone that has done it before. What you want to do. I think for me, if I could go back, that's what I would do today. I would say I would look for someone. Okay, I want to do this X, whatever the X might be. I'm gonna look for someone that has done it before. I'm gonna try to learn as much as possible. I'm gonna try to connect with that person somehow, because nowadays you have so much like coaching programs, and even though it's
Mm.
kind of people look at like, oh my goodness, another coach. Well, but you have to do like the due diligence of like look at their videos, try to learn about them. Okay, if you really like connect with that person, he has done what you want to do, what you accomplished, what you want to accomplish. I would say connect to that person to somehow, to some degree, and take the time to learn the skills. I think one of the things that is like we have the passion, let's say, is graphic design, right? I'm gonna give you my example. I love graphic design, but I'm not good at it. So I'm not, most likely, I won't be successful. Okay? I can connect to whoever, but if I'm not good, I'm not gonna be, I'm not gonna be successful. I would say look for someone that has done it before, develop your skills, whatever your skills might be, and go for it. I think don't fall into that trap of like going to 100 thousands of different courses, and it turns into years of learning and reading books, and then you talk to that person 2 years later, is still
Mm.
watching videos, is still like, have you done anything? No. I think it's just like have to have that balance, learn a little, connect with someone that has done it before, and start doing it. And then develop your skill set as you go, and then develop that skill set to the point that you're the best at it. And I think it's a killer formula, because no one can compete with someone that knows how to do things and knows that learn from someone that has done it before. and is willing to put the work to become the best out of it. And I think it's a killer formula, you know. But I would say it's a balance. Don't wait too much. Don't go too soon. Have that balance of like do some research, find a mentor, connect with that mentor somehow, learn the skills, start applying the skills, and learn from it and grow from there. You know, that's how, what I would do today.
Yeah. No, I love that. Um, I love that, especially the applying part. I think it's so easy to pick up a book or to listen to a podcast or to listen to someone, but the application of it, that's the
Mm.
hardest part. So I've gotten into the habit of if I pick up a book and I'm reading it, at the end of that book, I'm going to apply three principles
Mm.
from it,
That's awesome.
because yeah, it's no use of it me reading this book if that's all I'm going to do with it. It's like we read it to get knowledge, but then also it taught us something, so go apply it, right?
Yeah.
So there you go, guys. Um,
Awesome.
this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me, Alex. If people wanted to get in touch with you, learn more about what you do, where can they find you?
Thank you for having me, first and foremost. And it's been a
Of
journey
course.
connecting and with me. And thank you for your patience. It's
Of
awesome.
course.
I knew you from from the program that we've done together, but connecting with you today was very very special. Thank you. If
Thank
people
you.
wanted to connect, my Instagram handle is alexcosta.co. And I would love to connect with you. Anybody that wants to connect, has been amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Course, you're welcome. So there you go, guys. Ton of information in here to take in. I really hope the number one thing that I want you to get out of this today is to really, really apply, right? Like it's the last one I think is the most important one. Apply anything that you've learned today, whatever it was that you got, apply it to your life today so that you could have a better life, a better future. And thank you so much again for joining us here at the Sphere of Influence podcast, where we dive into fascinating conversations with industry experts, successful entrepreneurs like Alex, and creative minds to give you insider tips and inspire you in your entrepreneur way. If you found this episode helpful, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe and share it with others. Thank you again for listening, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Thank you.